If you are selling your house, today we're going to be talking about how to pick the best offer. So if you want to find out how to do that, then stick around. Okay, so you are selling your house and you have multiple offers because that's the market we're in right now, right? So what do you need to look at to determine what is going to be the best offer? The first thing that we're going to look at is the purchase price that the buyer offers on your home. So of course, it is our job to help you strategically price your property based on the market and the market comps. How we come up with a market price is based on pulling all the data in your neighborhood, all the comps that have sold, everything that is under contract within a certain time period, and we are able to formulate based on those properties what your property could ideally sell for. So with purchase price, a lot of times in this market right now, offers are above list price. Does that mean that you're gonna get above list price? Not necessarily, but that is something definitely that you want to look at as a factor in picking an offer. With the purchase price, we also want to look at, is the buyer willing to pay an appraisal gap or maybe waive their appraisal? So what that means is that a buyer comes in, they make an offer $20,000 above list price, and you are blown out of the water, so excited that you got an offer way above list price. The thing we want to consider is that even though they are offering above list price, are they willing to pay an appraisal gap if it does not appraise for that price? So sometimes buyers will just throw numbers out there to get your attention, but we also want to dive in deeper to make sure that you're going to be protected and that you're not going to have to renegotiate the price after the appraisal comes in. Same thing with waiving an appraisal. Some loans will not let them waive an appraisal. So a VA buyer, their appraisal cannot be waived. FHA, their appraisal cannot be waived. Conventional, definitely. And if a cash buyer comes in, they also, most of the time, will say that they're not going to expect an appraisal. With the purchase price, we also want to take into account what type of financing the buyer is going to be getting. Are they going to be paying cash? Are they going to be using an FHA, conventional, USDA, VA loan? We want to look at that because if the house does not qualify under USDA or it's not going to pass VA or FHA, then those are factors that we're definitely going to want to consider when picking a buyer's offer. With the purchase price, we also want to take into account where their financing is coming from, what lender they're choosing. So are they using an out-of-state online lender? Are they using a local lender? Can we get them to use a local lender if they have a very strong offer? These are things that you definitely want to keep in consideration. So basically, the reason that most sellers prefer local lenders is because they know the market, they know the property taxes, they have access to local appraisers. Things just happen more smoothly than some out-of-state lenders. Also, out-of-state lenders, especially ones that are online, sometimes have no idea what they're doing, and they don't do many closings in Georgia. And every state is different the way that they handle real estate. So that is something that you want to take into consideration. The last thing that I want to touch on with the purchase price is whenever the buyer is making an offer, are they also submitting a pre-qual or pre-approval letter? Believe it or not, some agents will still show houses to buyers even though they don't know if they're going to be pre-approved for that property. So once again, they can come in with this beautiful unicorn offer, but they actually can't afford the property. And then if you accept that offer and then you find out that they don't qualify for it, then you have to go back on the market, and it gets really messy. So basically, there are things that we want to look at to make sure that the buyer is actually qualified and is able to make that offer. Due diligence is the next thing that we want to take a look at in the offer. So typically in this market right now, the shorter due diligence, the better. A couple years ago, I used to do due diligence that was like 14 days, and that's basically unheard of now. So typically due diligence time period is 5 to 7 days. What that means is during that time period, that's when the buyer can get an inspection, they can, whatever they want to figure out about the property within that time period, they can. And if they find anything that is unacceptable and they don't want to move forward, they can terminate and get their earnest money back. So the shorter due diligence, the better, because basically it gives them less time to get cold feet or to, back out of the deal. Also, in some offers, buyers do waive their due diligence, which means that they are locked in, that when they send in their earnest money, there is no way that they're going to get it back. So that's also something that you want to pay attention to if a buyer does make an offer like that. The next thing we want to talk about with choosing an offer is earnest money. So Earnest money is basically the skin in the game that the buyer puts in with their offer. The higher the amount, basically the more that they're willing to risk. So if you have a buyer come in and they say, I'm gonna do $500 earnest money. $500 for some people may be super easy to walk away from, but if a buyer comes in and they put $20,000 down for earnest money, which is not always the case, but I'm just giving you a different perspective, $20,000 might be a little bit harder to walk away from. So when someone is making an offer, the higher earnest money, the better. Closing costs is the next thing I want to talk about. So of course, in this market right now, it is very typical that buyers are not asking for closing costs. If you're in a multiple offer situation, typically you're going to see that most buyers are not going to ask for closing costs. But in the case that they do, we are going to factor that into the total profit and the total cash to close for the buyer, everything, so that the numbers make sense for you as a seller and that you make the most profit that you possibly can. Closing date and possession is the next thing I want to talk about. So if for some reason you are selling your home in this area and you're going to be purchasing in this area, maybe you're upgrading to a bigger house, maybe you're downsizing to a smaller house. Something that I like to tell my sellers about that sometimes they're not always aware of or they don't think about is that it is amazing to be a seller right now. It is a little bit more challenging to be a buyer. So when you're going from the selling side to the buying side, there are some things that you want to consider. So if you need to find your next property, but you don't want to go into a temporary living situation with an extended stay or doing month-to-month rent, something that you may want to consider is that you still want to close on your property so that you can take the funds from the property that you sell in order to put a down payment on the new property or whatever the case may be. Something that you may want to request from a buyer and have it be upfront that they know about this is that you want to remain in the property post-closing and have a temporary occupancy situation. This is something that I've told multiple sellers, even some of my sellers that are relocating from other states that have to sell their home. This is something that you may want to consider. The next thing I want to talk about is reading buyer letters or watching buyer videos. So this is a tactic that a lot of agents are trying to help their buyers get a competitive advantage, and sometimes buyers will write these sweet personal letters or include these sweet personal videos, and I will tell you that I will be the first person that will tell you to take the emotion out of accepting an offer. At the end of the day, this is a transaction, and the more personal attachment that you have to that buyer, the more messy it can be. And also, if for some reason a buyer submits a letter and maybe they have a different last name or their video, it shows more personal or familial things about them, and you choose an offer based on what that person looks like or their familial status, whatever the case may be, you can actually get in big trouble for that, and I can as well. So I will tell you that when it comes to any type of letters or videos, just put those aside, and then maybe after you accept the offer, then you can review them and look at them, but that is something that you do not want to do. When someone is submitting a letter or a video, that is something that you do not want to have a factor into accepting an offer. When selecting an offer, I've also run into situations where a seller may have someone that they personally know who submits an offer for their property. I would also advise that if there's any type of personal tie, you also want to not have that be the sole decision of why you're accepting that offer. We are specifically going over all of these different items to help you select the best offer. So sometimes, with those personal ones, I've seen deals where they fall apart because they weren't qualified, it was their friend. Those are situations that we want to avoid, so just keep that in mind. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is sight unseen offers, which are very common right now, and we actually, being a relocating specialist team, we have a ton of buyers who are relocating from the area, and sometimes they may be doing virtual tours or they may be flying in for a weekend and viewing properties. Being a seller, you want to make sure that the offer that you're choosing is completely solid. So if someone just happens to see your property and they're in another state and they've never seen it before, that is definitely something that you want to take into consideration when accepting an offer, because a lot of buyers right now, with the inventory being so low, sometimes they're just throwing offers out there all day long because they want to see which one is going to stick. So you want to make sure that you're taking that into account. Did they actually physically see the property, or did their agent take the time to to go show them a video of it, or are they making an offer based on just pictures? The last item that I want to talk about with picking the best offer is contingencies, and specifically one contingency. So if a buyer does have to sell their home on the other side, this is something that of course you can accept as a seller, especially if they're your only option, but we're trying to factor in that it's a multiple offer situation right now. So when you accept an offer that is contingent upon a buyer's house selling, that means that their house has to sell in order for them to be able to put a down payment or whatever funds to go towards the purchase of your property. Anything can happen at any moment. Even though they may be under contract, they've gotten past the inspection part, they still have to get past the appraisal part. Or maybe they've made it all the way to almost the end of the deal and it completely falls apart, and then it pushes back your closing. So that's just something that you want to keep in mind when you are looking at the total package of the offer. Do they have a contingency to sell their home? How strong is it? Is that something that you want to even factor in if you do have other options of offers that don't have those contingencies? So just keep that in mind. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and comment below some questions you have for our team. We're going to put together a little FAQ for you guys and post that sometime soon, and go ahead and check out the next video.